All right, something funny happened. And watch this. 2 videos ago, I said that every time I write something down, it becomes fucking real. Why? Because the minute I write it down, my head starts processing it differently. And especially because it's always highlighting certain concepts. So it's really just, again, like human beings do not think. What we do is we process thoughts. And that's why character matters, intention matters, personality matters. All of these things are basically the harmony that you have between your heart and your fucking mind. Your heart being what's in charge of your body and the energy of your body, and your mind, which is what's in charge of the energy of your thought. Naturally, and the intention is basically that comes from somewhere. Let's call it the soul. I call it the fragment of the universe. Yeah, because we're an extension of light, right? So we're a piece of the whole. I'm fucking with you. But I mean, like what I said is serious. But like, calm down. It's fine. We all can look at things any way we see fit. But so today's video is flow versus the grind. Does that sound familiar? Yes. The minute I read it, I was like, what? I remember myself talking about this recently. Flow has grind has flow, question mark, question mark, question mark. So what I did naturally is I went back to the videos that I recorded and I was looking at them. And literally, 1, 2, 3, 4 videos ago, there was a video that wrote a debate between the grind and flow. How balance is. So 6 videos later, which seemed to be a couple of days, maybe a week plus later in this book, I went back to the same topic because it's still in my mind. Imagine, at first it was like, what's the debate between the grind and the flow? What's the difference? And the reason I wrote this is because a couple of hundred videos ago, I discussed basically, not a couple of hundreds, maybe 30 videos ago, I discussed the concept of the grind in games. Because in games, there's a thing called grinding. And a lot of people use that word here. Just like I never liked the word hustle because hustling is always running after something. I don't believe that's how life, I don't believe that's the optimal way that life operates. Let's put it that way. And so 4 or 5 videos later or notes later, I'm still thinking about the same thing. So the topic is flow versus the grind. Again, again. We've been through all these discussions, but right now, the flow has a certain bit of grind in it. Correct. But does grind have flow? And that is where we get to start again considering the flow and the grind. I'm going to pause simply because I have no idea what to talk about and I really do not want to repeat the same things I did before. So maybe I'll pause it for now and I'll continue this video after an hour or something, just to have something come back to my mind or just to get inspired by something. I don't know. I'll be back. All right, I couldn't do it, man. I generally tried to like take my mind somewhere else, but I couldn't do it. My head was like, no, these videos are supposed to be on the spot. So I did take a minute break. Ah, I don't even remember what I discussed about the flow and the grind. But let's make it a theme, the flow versus the grind, right? And we're on it. This should be fun. Flow has grind. Grind has flow, 3 question marks. Flow versus the grind. Flow has grind. Grind has flow, question mark. 5 videos ago, you see it here, it's debate between the grind and the flow. Same theme, man. Does the flow have grind in it? What we did in previous videos was separated the grind and the flow because when you're grinding, it's a state of mind that's filled with intensity, right? Because you're intensely doing something in order to get done with it. And when you're grinding, especially the concept of grinding in games, is when you know you're spending X amount of time to get something out of it. So I think the grind mainly focuses on the result or end results, while flow would focus on the process. Why would I say that? Well, the flow does focus on the process because you end up being in a hyper-focused state of where you don't really like see anything except of what you're doing in front of you. But the grind sounds like you're actually going through mundane tasks and ultimately just kind of like performing what you do best in the best way possible, just in order for you to get things done. Think about it this way. In a factory where like everyone knows Ford Motors. So Henry Ford revolutionized building cars simply because he literally just put every person does one thing on a car. And that's why anytime you see like factories, like car factories, you see like a group of people with a set of tools doing one thing only. So effectively what happens is the car passes, this guy only installs these doors, this guy only installs the wheels. If they do the process and basically each person does the same thing all day long. And they do get good at it, man, but that's it. They're only good at one thing. So maybe until they're actually at the beginning, they get a state of flow into it in order for them to be able to kind of like learn and evolve and start doing it as best as they could, even though it's a mundane task that's repetitive, which is what grinding is. So the grind does have flow, but flow does not have grind. See, what I wrote here is flow has grind, but grind have flow? And I actually put question marks. But that's not the case. I think once flow stops being flowy, it becomes a grind. This is interesting. Which means if I were in a factory and let's just say, I don't know if you guys watch Rick and Morty, but like in one episode, Rick goes crazy because like in the Citadel where it's just Ricks, one of them basically got a job as a what do they call them? A conveyor belt, like something. Like on the conveyor belt, he does one thing, and he lost his shift because it's kind of like one of those like I die. And putting that image basically of somebody doing one thing the whole day and for the rest of their lives, we see them a lot on YouTube. The flow has a grind in it. It's getting out of the grind that creates the flow. And once you get out of the flow, you create the grind. So the flow has grind in it, but the grind doesn't have flow on it anymore. Because you really have to kind of like do something in a grindy way until you enter a state of flow. And you think about repetitive tasks, but the reality is you're doing something you already know how to do. So every time you kind of like you're grinding, but you're doing it better. So it becomes a flow in how you're doing it until you reach the peak or the limitations, whatever it is, right? Like it's either your peak or the limitations of what you can do. Again, like if you're sitting on a conveyor belt and all you're doing is fixing doors, you're gonna get really good at installing doors in cars. But where's the limits, right? You're just only installing doors. It becomes a grind. It becomes a daily routine that's kind of like Monday. Now, if you are on that same conveyor belt, but like you shift to actually like installing what's it called? Wheels, for example. You probably use the same drill points, so you've gained mastery on that one, but you're experiencing different approaches on how to put the wheels better, faster, efficiently, and all that shit. So that also kind of creates a flow, but it's a small one, right? Because you're not completely evolving. It's not like you're sitting there and actually like designing a car Or it's not like you're sitting there and building a house. Every house, like the mundane parts, okay, so like grinds as well, but that you enter that flow state. If you're building a house, you're not thinking of the brick by brick. But first, when you're laying bricks, you actually like it's a grind until you start being until every brick in your head is towards a wall, and then there's a flow until the wall is done. And then eventually your head is towards the actual house. So the flow is the bricks and then the pipes, everything becomes a flow. I think that's the essence of like how I see flow is the process. But ultimately, the bigger your vision, the more flow you get to experience. And if what you're doing or what you're trying to do is ends right when you finish doing it, then it's not really a flowy experience anymore because ultimately, like, if you're repeating the same flow, it becomes a grind. Why the fuck not, man? So the flow has grind. The grind has flow in it, but when the flow ends, it becomes the grind. Hey, it's a video, yeah?